Okay. Today, the administration announced a historic new donation in the global fight to defeat COVID-19. President Biden announced that the United States is purchasing an additional 500 million Pfizer vaccines to donate to low and lower middle income countries around the world. Before today, the United States had already committed to donating over 600 million doses to the world. That includes 500 million Pfizer doses that we purchased earlier this summer to donate to 100 countries in need, the largest donation of COVID-19 vaccines by a single country ever. Overall, we have now shipped nearly 160 million of these doses to 100 countries around the world, from Peru to Pakistan, Sri Lanka to Sudan, El Salvador to Ethiopia. To put this in perspective, the United States has now delivered more free doses than every other country in the world combined. Millions more get shipped each week, and importantly, our donations come with zero strings attached. Today's announcement brings our total to over 1.1 vaccines donated to the world overall. And we're building from here. This is obviously a huge commitment. And another piece to put it in perspective, for every shot we are delivering here, we're giving we're committing 3 shots to the rest of the world. This commitment also comes as part of a joint EU-US vaccine sharing commitment that the United States and Europe will share doses globally to enhance vaccination rates, with a priority on sharing through COVAX and improving vaccination rates urgently in low and middle income countries. We welcome the EU's announcement today that they will donate over 500 million doses. This is in addition to the doses we have financed through COVAX. And these announcements come as part of today's, of course, summit and global COVID-19 summit, which gathered together, convened heads of state and leaders from over 100 countries. Let's see. With that, I just wanted to also note the Vice President also spoke just recently at this summit, and she announced the U.S. is contributing at least $250 million to establish a new global health security financial intermediary fund at the World Bank to coalesce resources for pandemic preparedness. With that, why don't you kick us off?
Thanks. Media along the border have reported that many Haitians are being released into the United States. Can you clarify why they're not being placed on expulsion flights to Haiti? And does the administration have any concern that these releases undercut the public messaging that Haitians should not come to the border?
Well, let me explain to you a little bit of how the process works. So DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, continues to expel migrants under CDC's Title 42 authority. Those who cannot be expelled, and this has been the case and been our policy and process for migrants coming from any country around the world under Title 42 and who do not have a legal basis to remain, are placed in either expedited, in a form of removal proceedings. And individuals who are not immediately removed are either placed in alternative to detention or transported to an ICE facility. If they are placed in an alternative to detention, there's also a process required, a legal document, a document they would have. As a part of that process, Border Patrol agents collect biometric and biographic information, fingerprints, photos, phone numbers, and an address in the United States, and also run a background check as a part of the process. And those who do not report, like anyone who's in our country without legal status, are subject to removal by ICE. I give you all of that to understand the different steps in the process. Obviously, there are flights. We need to have enough flights to transport individuals to Haiti or to other countries. And there are a range of flights, as you know, that are going to different parts of the world, depending, and those are in process. So if we're not, if there isn't a flight ready yet, those individuals may be placed in alternatives to detention, and there, as I noted, is this mechanism where these documents are required.
And could you offer any further details on the call that happened late this morning between President Biden and President Macron? How long did it last?
Sure.
How was the tone? With how much, there was quite a bit of detail in the a readout of plans for the meeting. How much of that was worked out beforehand, before the presidents even got together?
Sure. Well, as we've noted in the past, to take your last question first, there have been ongoing discussions and engagements at a variety of levels between the United States and France. So certainly the possibility of a meeting was something that was naturally discussed in advance, but also natural for the president to raise that and discuss it at the leader level. In terms of the tone of the call, it was friendly. It was one where we're hopeful, and the president is hopeful, this is a step in returning to normal in a long, important, abiding relationship that the United States has with France. It was about 30 minutes long. As we noted in the readout, and as you said, it was extensive, but during the conversation, the president reaffirmed the strategic importance of French and European engagement, I should say, in the Indo-Pacific region, something that we look forward to continuing to work with them on. And as we said in the readout, the French ambassador will return to Washington next week, and he will then start intensive work with U.S. officials. So that will be part of the ongoing next steps that we go from here. And as we also noted, they will meet in Europe at the end of October.
If I may just quickly follow
Sure.
up on that. Boris Johnson earlier today dismissed French anger over the submarine deal, saying the French officials should get a grip. Substantively, does the administration agree with the Prime Minister's criticism that the French have failed to acknowledge the value of AUKUS and the submarine deal to global security? And then secondly, is calling on the French to get a grip helpful at this point?
Well, I can only speak for our relationship with the French and our relationship with the United Kingdom. And I will say that the president during this call, as we said in the readout, acknowledged that there could be there could have been more discussion in advance of the announcement. And that was an important message for him to convey during that conversation. So I can't speak to the comments and whether they're constructive or not from other countries.
Jen, hey, go ahead. Thanks, Jen. Follow up on immigration. I have one on the schedule today. So Secretary Mayorkas has now been asked twice on the Hill, and he's not been able to provide an answer to this. So I want to ask you, do you have the numbers? How many Haitians have been deported? How many have been processed? And how many have been allowed to stay in the United States?
I certainly understand why you're asking and understand why people have been asking Secretary Mayorkas. Those are numbers that are the Department of Homeland Security would have the most up-to-date numbers.
But why is it so hard to keep track of a simple number like that? Why can't you give it? Why can't he give it? It's been 2 days now he's been asked that.
I'm certain they will provide it. It's an absolutely fair question to ask, and I'm certain he just wanted to have the most up-to-date numbers to provide.
On the campaign trail, then candidate, now President Biden said, quote, "We're going to restore our moral standing in the world and our historic role as a safe haven for refugees and asylum seekers." How does what's happening on the border right now with Haitian refugees square with that?
Well, which aspect of what's happening at the border?
What's happening with the Haitians?
Do you mean the photos
Them
we've
being
seen,
sent
or do
out,
you
the
mean...
photos? Yeah, them not.
Well, first, we understand and agree that this has been an incredibly heart-wrenching issue. We've watched the photos of Haitians gathering under a bridge, many with families, and the horrific video of the CBP officers on horses using brutal and inappropriate measures against innocent people. I think it's important to address that and separately address what our immigration policies are and understand that people are combining them, but that's why I asked that question. I would also reiterate that there is an investigation that will be completed by next week, which the Secretary confirmed, that will determine the next steps on both policy and personnel. All important questions people are asking, and in the interim, those individuals were placed on administrative leave and will not be interacting with any migrants. So as it relates to those photos and that horrific video, we're not going to stand for that kind of inhumane treatment, and obviously we want this investigation to be completed rapidly. I will say on the broader question you were asking, the president remains committed to putting in place a humane and orderly immigration system that includes an established and efficient process for applying for asylum, that includes a range of programs for individuals to apply to stay in the United States. That requires Congress acting, and it requires also health conditions improving as we are in the middle of a pandemic. And we are continuing to expel people coming from a range of countries as we are continuing to apply Title 42 because there is a global pandemic that is ongoing. So I would think it's important to note that our policies, our border restrictions are being applied not just to Haitians, but to people who are coming irregularly to migrate to the country from anywhere. More than 90,000 people were expelled in August. That was even before what we've seen in the troubling photos under the bridge. We are applying immigration laws. We are applying what are border requirements, and we are applying Title 42, which again is a health application given we're in a global pandemic.
And just quickly on the schedule today, with all the Democrats that are here, would you describe where we at on the president's economic plan as a make or break moment?
I would never describe it that way, but I would say, look, this is an important moment where we're in a pivotal period of our negotiations and discussions, and we always knew and have always known that as we get close to points where there are votes called or where there are key moments that Congress has on the calendar, that there needs to be deeper engagement by the president. That's what you're seeing happen today, as you've seen in our announcement of his schedule. He's meeting not just with leadership, he's also meeting with members of a range of caucuses across a broad spectrum of beliefs in the Democratic Party. And he sees his role as uniting and as working to bring together people over common agreement on a path forward. And that's his objective. So yes, these meetings are important. He's looking forward to hearing from people and looking forward to playing a role in bringing people together over achieving our shared goal of lowering costs for people and making the tax system more fair.
Order.
Oh, go ahead, April, and then I'll go.
Jen, just bear with me because there are a lot of moving parts on this issue. Members of the Congressional Black Caucus were here today, meeting with the National Security Team, Cedric Richmond and Susan Rice.
Yep.
Can you give us an update, because they were talking about Haiti, the immigration issue at the border. Could you give us an update on that and what is expected for tomorrow's meeting with civil rights leaders, be it teleconference or what have you, with White House officials?
Just what do you mean by an update exactly? An update on what happened in the meeting?
What happened in the meeting, what was given to them, what did they ask for? Because black leaders are making big asks of this crisis moment.
Tell me more about what you think they're asking for.
Okay, what they're asking for, the asylum process, what does that look like? Reverend Al Sharpton is going to the border tomorrow to see what that looks like, if people are actually being able to get asylum who's here. Also, you talked about the condemnation of what the patrol agents were doing with the reins or whip, whatever, with the intent to lash, to hurt people, to keep them away from the border. They want to know, is that practice going to still be in place? Courses and the lashing, those kind of issues.
So I just wanted to have clarity on exactly what you were asking about, April. That's it. On the second piece, there is an investigation that is ongoing that the Secretary of Homeland Security has made clear he wants to happen quickly, and he wants the outcome to be done by next week. Once that process is concluded, that will help be a determinant in any policy decisions and personnel decisions, both. All important questions. I'm sure that was what was conveyed as well. On the first part, I think in the answer I gave just a few minutes ago here, I think what we are conveying to anyone who are our partners, whether they are civil rights leaders, members of the CBC, and others who have important questions here, is how outraged we also are by these photos and this video, our commitment to this investigation, but also how our immigration processing system works. And in response to Amar's question before, what I tried to lay out is what happens, right? No matter where you are coming from, if you are irregularly migrating, we are still applying Title 42 because we are in the middle of a public health crisis. This is what is conveyed to anyone who has questions. Those individuals who are eligible to stay in the United States through a range of our programs, that they would be allowed to stay in the United States through a range of our programs. If they are, there are some who are placed into removal processes where they also can make the case, whether it's fear of returning back to countries, et cetera. They will go through the process as well. So I'm sure what they are doing is explaining exactly what our immigration processes are and reiterating as well our outrage at the photos and the video.
But bear with me because this is moving pieces. But with asylum, there are people, advocates, immigration advocates, especially for advocating for the Haitian migrants right now. They're saying that this administration is breaking UN policies and its own policies by moving people out before allowing them to ask for asylum. Is that the case?
First of all, April, what we are doing, one, Haiti has temporary protected status for people who arrived here before July 29th. That is not a status that most other people who are irregularly migrating from other countries have. as individuals, as we go through this process, as I outlined just a few minutes ago, individuals who cannot be expelled under Title 42, a range of reasons why they may not be able to be. Those individuals are placed into removal proceedings. That is where the process would take place, where they would apply for a variety of programs. While they're in that process, they are required to also provide biometric and biographic information and data. So that's how the process works. What is important for people to know and understand is that this is how our immigration and border requirements apply to everyone, whether they're coming from Haiti or any country in South or Central America.
You have Africans as well, that you said there are people from other places, but you have Africans, Cameroonians, Ugandans, and Senegalese who are coming to that border as well. What happens with them as they are looking for asylum? Do you lump them into the same category with the Haitians that are at the border, be it Del Rio or wherever along
I
the
think
border?
the point I'm making, April, and then we just have to move on to get to more people, is that anyone who's coming from anywhere, if there's temporary protected status for their country, as there are for Haitians who arrived before July, that they can apply through that program. If they're coming from other countries where we don't have that status, then they are expelled according to Title 42. If they are not, if they can't be expelled according to Title 42, they're placed in expedited removal or in alternatives to detention, no matter what country they're coming from. Go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you. Going back to the phone call this morning briefly with the French president, did President Biden apologize to Emmanuel Macron?
He acknowledged that there could have been greater consultation. And the call, again, as I stated earlier, was a friendly call, and there was agreement that we wanted to move forward in our relationship.
The French translation said that open consultation, quote, would have made it possible to avoid this situation. The English translation said the situation would have benefited from open consultation. So similar, but not entirely the same. So did the president apologize to his French friend?
He acknowledged there could have been greater consultation, but again, this call was really focused on the path forward and returning back to normal and the important work we have to do with the French ahead.
Was the president using this as a learning point, perhaps? Who does he believe, or should he have been more aware of the potential fallout from this? Has he had conversations with any staff members, like the Secretary of State or the National Security Advisor, about exactly how this breakdown happened?
We always look to assess how we can make improvements to how we do consultations, and certainly they'll apply, and that part of that happens through conversations with members of his national security team, and we'll work to apply those moving forward.
Does he hold Jake Sullivan responsible for this?
He certainly doesn't hold anyone. He holds himself responsible, and certainly, though, he has a responsibility to talk to his team always about how we can best manage our diplomatic relationships, and that's what he does in any scenario.
One more small question
Yeah.
on the meetings this afternoon. On the price tag, is the president still committed to the $3.5 trillion price tag, or does he believe now that more flexibility on that number is warranted?
Well, even before today or before this week, the president has always been open to negotiations and discussions and knew that he was not going to be alone able to wave a magic wand and pass a proposal, right? So part of the objective today, while he's meeting with a range of members with a range of viewpoints, which we welcome, is to see where people are and work to see how we can get this across the finish line moving forward. What he's encouraged by is the fact that there is actually, I know we focus a lot, understandably, on areas of disagreement. There's a lot of agreement on lowering costs for American families, on making sure we're investing now in addressing the climate crisis, in making the tax system more fair. There's a lot of agreement on that. And it's a point where we need to figure out what the path forward is. The president's going to play a role in hopefully uniting people around the next steps. Go ahead.
Just to follow up again on the French, you said in the statements that there will be a meeting in late October. Is that in France? Is that on the sidelines of the G20 or the COP26?
Well, there are some international forums that are happening next month that might bring the president to Europe. I don't have any formal announcements yet to make, but to your question, we're still finalizing what it looks like exactly.
Democratic negotiators on the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act said the bipartisan talks are dead. Is that the view of the White House? Is there any response to this announcement that it's apparently over?
Well, I'd also say there was a statement put out by Senator Booker, who is a key, I think you were referencing that. I think that was the statement you were referencing. So I would say that first, the president is, and everyone in the administration, we have been strongly supportive of Senator Booker and Representative Bass in their efforts, and we're greatly appreciative of their efforts, which we consider to be ongoing. Unfortunately, Republicans rejected reforms that even the previous president had supported and refused to engage on key issues that many in law enforcement were willing to address. And so we are disappointed. The president is disappointed, even after Senator Booker and Representative Bass did yeoman's work, even after they worked to secure law enforcement support and showed they were willing to find consensus. So yes, we acknowledge, of course, what the negotiators have conveyed publicly at this point in time. I can convey to you that in the coming weeks, we're going to consult the president. We will all, our team, will consult with members of Congress, the law enforcement, civil rights communities, and victims' families to discuss a path forward, including potential executive actions the president can take to ensure we live up to the American ideal of equality, justice under law.
And on the situation on the southern border, there was a meeting today with members of the CBC. The vice president talked to the Homeland Security Secretary to express concern. How often does this get to the president? Does he get briefed on these situations, or is he just getting it in news reports?
Of course he gets briefed on them, absolutely, by his team.
Okay. Well, to the point that we were trying to ask him about yesterday, what is his impression of this situation down there? What does he make of how those Border Patrol agents were seen to be interacting with these migrants? And, you know, where is he on dealing with these wide range of immigration issues that continue to challenge this government?
Well, Ed, on the subject of the video footage and the photos, the president was horrified by that, just as we all were. He, of course, received a briefing and update from his national security team on the efforts by the Secretary of Homeland Security to launch an investigation, and one that he would like to see concluded rapidly. As it relates to our efforts to implement our immigration laws and border requirements, the president is quite hopeful, as he conveyed on his first day in office when he introduced an immigration bill, that we can take steps to put in place a more humane, a more orderly system, especially after a very broken one over the last several years, that has better asylum processing, that has a better system and a range of programs individuals can apply to. The president also believes and knows, as we all do, we're in the middle of a global pandemic, and we need to continue to administer Title 42, which expels individuals who come to the border. So he is horrified by the photos and the footage. He is also committed to implementing and abiding by our laws.
And what is your understanding